The Commonwealth Ombudsman has launched an inquiry into the skyrocketing rates of suicide attempts and self-harm in immigration detention centres. New numbers reveal an average of 3 threatened or actual attempts across the detention centre network per day. In just 1 week earlier this month, there were 50 such incidents. Political correspondent Tom Eagleton has this special report.
The Commonwealth Ombudsman launched his official inquiry after seeing the evidence of his own eyes.
I spent a week on Christmas Island myself at the end of June, and there were 30 incidents in just that week. We then heard that in the first week of July there were 50 from around all of the places of detention, and it just tells us that there's something wrong and something needs to be looked at.
An independent advisor to the government on mental health in immigration detention centres is backing the inquiry.
I think this is very appropriate, much needed. We're at a crucial time now within the detention system.
The Ombudsman's obtained figures from the Immigration Department showing there were 1,132 instances of actual or threatened self-harm across the immigration detention network over the last 12 months. 1 suicide's been confirmed over that period. There are coronial inquests into another 5 suspected suicides.
There are serious suicide attempts usually every night. So it's a mass culture built around fear and despair. And in fact, talking to detainees, they describe that, their preoccupation with death.
Latelines obtained internal documents from Serco, which operates the detention network under contract from the government. There are a log of self-harm incidents on the violence-prone Christmas Island detention centre from May and June this year. On the day of June 9, there were 5 incidents of self-harm, 2 hanging attempts, 4 threats of self-harm and 1 of suicide ideation. Another page advises Hoffmans to be worn by officers at all times. Hoffmans are understood to be knives given to staff to cut down detainees who've attempted to hang themselves. So high is the suicide risk that detainees are not allowed their own razor. If the detainees need to shave, the razor will be provided while they have a shower, and after they finish, they hand it to the officer who then disposes of it. Tomorrow marks 3 years since the government announced an overhaul of the Howard government's approach to running the detention network.
The policy initiatives I've detailed today are, I think, the beginning of a new approach, introducing new and more compassionate values to our detention policies.
The Ombudsman says spiralling self-harm rates don't appear to be consistent with those values.
We think that the elaboration of those detention values represents current government policy. That's what we're looking at to encourage. And until that's changed, I think the government has bound itself to those.
We have people who've experienced torture and trauma, and government policy states that those people should not be detained, and yet they are.
The Ombudsman will work with a committee of mental health experts and says he'll leave no stone unturned, including an examination of the government contracts under which Serco operates the detention centres.
We're entitled to speak to anyone and to see any document we want at any time.
The government says it too is concerned by the rate of self-harm in the detention network. A spokesman for the minister told Lateline the Immigration Department and the contracted health services provider ensure people in detention have access to mental health care, including mental health nurses, psychologists and psychiatrists. All personnel who work with people in detention are trained to recognise and respond to the warning signs and risk factors of self-harm. The Immigration Minister Chris Bowen's initiated his own investigation into better mental health strategies at detention centres, working with, amongst others, the head of Suicide Prevention Australia, Dr Michael Dudley. Tom Eagleton, Lateline.